And we are back on SportsManRadio. I'm your host, Chris Shanafel, and I am now joined by one of the hosts from NFL AM on the NFL Network. He is Brian Weber. Brian, how's it going, man?
Everything's good, Chris. Thanks for having me on your show.
Hey, it's an honor. I actually want to start this conversation off by talking about something that has been in the news lately when it comes to the NFL, and that is the possibility of NFL games no longer having kickoffs. Instead, I believe the team who receives the ball, they will start their drive automatically. It'll be 4th down and 15. They have a choice to punt it right there, and they have a choice to go for it and take their chances on getting it or not. I'm not really a fan of this. I'd rather, just have no change, and I think more likely than not we're seeing more touchbacks anyways. I'm not too much of a fan of that either, but I do know that we see a whole lot of injuries occurring on these kickoffs and whatnot. Brian, what are your thoughts on this whole situation?
Well, Chris, let me just give you some of the backstory. This idea first was presented in Time Magazine this week by Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, is on the cover. And as part of that profile, they got into the league's initiative to really emphasize player safety, because every week you watch the National Football League, you see all these major hits, and we've become much more sophisticated as a society about head trauma, concussions, brain injuries, those kind of things. So the league is extremely active in trying to find ways to make the game safer. And while the kickoff can be one of the most thrilling plays in all of football, and we all love watching guys like Joshua Cribbs try to take it back for a touchdown, statistics indicate that kickoffs are the single most dangerous play in football, because of reasons you can figure out. You have guys running down the field at rapid speed, sometimes having to launch themselves into other players. Also, if you think about it in terms of player personnel, often special team players only have a chance to shine in those small circumstances. Guys trying to stay on teams really have an incentive to try to make a play more so than maybe a starter would, and perhaps that leads to more violent collisions. So the league, in partnership with the Players Association, is trying to figure out ways as to how to make the game safer. And just in terms of those numbers I mentioned, it would seem like the logical starting point would be, how do you make the kickoff a safer play? And as you touched on, we're having more touchbacks when they adjust to where the ball was spotted on the kickoff. But there is a theory that if you were to take the kickoff away, and you touched on one way of starting the game, that 4th and 15 scenario, there's another school of thought that says just give the offensive team the ball at the 25 and don't worry about the gimmick that would come together with that 4th and 15. Do you go for it or punt it thing? But taking the kickoff away, the idea goes, would make the game a lot safer, and clearly that's the priority for the league right now, with concussions becoming more and more of an issue around the NFL. And
are you a fan of this thought?
Well, fan is a tough word to say, because I got into broadcasting because I love football, and I am a fan of it. And as a fan, I love to see the kickoff. And, you think about just the drama at the start of the game, right? Everyone's on their feet. Everybody's energized, and it's a release when toe meets leather, as we used to say a million years ago in broadcasting. But at the same time, because I do work for the NFL Network, which is owned by the league, I want the league to be as successful as possible. I want the sport to continue to grow. And I do think, I have nieces, I have friends with kids, and if I was a parent right now, I might have some issues if I had an 8-year-old kid, a 10-year-old kid, who I want my son playing football because of all the concerns about head issues. So whatever needs to be done to make the game safer, I think, should be examined. And I would support the change if it could be statistically determined that taking the kickoff away from football would make the game safer.
All right. Next topic is John Gruden. I personally don't think he'll coach a team next season. If he does, I think it'll be the Philadelphia Eagles with all the talent they have over there. But there's no way I see him going on to coach the Oakland Raiders again, or even coaching the Cowboys or a college team. What do you think? Will we see John Gruden back on the sidelines as a coach next season?
Well, we're all guessing, and nobody knows what John Gruden wants to do, what his ultimate ambition is. I would say this, though. If he wants to coach again, now is the time to do it, because once you're so far removed from the game, you become a broadcaster. You look at Bill Cowher. I don't think Bill Cowher is ever going back to coaching, even though you hear rumblings about Carolina because he has a house in Charlotte, and obviously he has Super Bowl credentials if you want to coach again. But once you get so many years removed, you become a broadcaster, and John Gruden's right now at that tipping point. And if he wants to coach, it seems to me this is the time to do it. At the same time, I think he's terrific on Monday Night Football. He makes a lot of money. If you saw the interview with Brian Gumbel and John Gruden on HBO's Real Sports, he said what you often hear coaches say, that broadcasting is the best way to stay connected with the game without any of the downside of working 20 hours a day, never seeing your family, having all the stress of winning and losing. You get a lot of the positives of being around the sport with very few of the negatives. So I think it comes down to what's in John Gruden's heart. Does he really want to be back on the sideline again? If so, now's the time to do it. I agree with you. Philadelphia would make the most sense to me. San Diego's an attractive job as well, and I think it's a foregone conclusion North Turner's not coming back. But, John Gruden, early in his career as a young assistant coach, was in Philadelphia, was the offensive coordinator, if memory serves, before he came over to the Raiders. I don't think the Raiders are going to happen. Just too much baggage with the way he left Oakland to go to Tampa Bay. And while Al Davis has passed away, it's now Mark Davis' son who's running that organization, and there'd be some personal dynamics there. So, yeah, if John Gruden wants to coach again, I think Philadelphia is the most likely destination.
You guys are listening to Sportsman Radio. I'm your host, Chris Shanafel, and I am talking some NFL with Brian Weber from the NFL Network. Brian, we all know how terrible the Jets are this season, and with the injuries to Santonio Holmes and Darrelle Revis early in the season, that certainly does not help. All season long, we've had this quarterback controversy with Mark Sanchez and Tim Tebow. Then Mark Sanchez goes out, throws 3 interceptions against the Cardinals, and gets benched by former 7th-round draft pick Greg McElroy. He gets in the game, scores on his first drive, and wins the game 7-6. It's a nasty situation in New York for the Jets. Who do you think right now is the right choice to start at quarterback for the New York Jets?
I think the choice moving forward will be financially driven because, as you know, you probably read, your listeners have seen this item, Mark Sanchez is guaranteed $8 million next year. And you don't pay a guy $8 million to sit on the bench. So there's going to be a financial component to this decision, which I think would suggest the Jets stayed with Sanchez. That's why they went back to him for the game against the Jags. But clearly, Mark Sanchez has taken a huge step back this year. I mean, you touched on the injuries with the Jets. If you look on that roster, they don't have a ton of offensive talent, so perhaps that's the reason why his numbers are down so dramatically. But if you just watch the games, and everybody has bad games, so let's not go crazy about the Arizona contest with the 3 interceptions. But if you watch Sanchez over the course of this year, right, he just doesn't look like the same quarterback. His confidence is gone. He's making poor decisions. Completion percentage is atrocious. So it's hard to justify him staying in the lineup other than all the money he's due. Greg McElroy, I think, is a competent player. I saw a lot of him play in college when he was on that Alabama team, national championship. But there's nothing, to me, in a limited sample size that says, hey, McElroy's the guy we have to get on the field. This is not a Colin Kaepernick situation. And let's just take Tebow out of the equation because he's not going to play there. I know all about Tebow's legions of fans, and I understand Tebow mania, but he is not a legitimate NFL quarterback. He just has too many flaws mechanically, so I don't think he was ever in the mix to really be the starter there. So, it's not your traditional 3-way competition. Right now, it's Sanchez versus McElroy. I think it's Sanchez the rest of the way. Jets reassess the offseason. What would be intriguing, though, is you look about quarterbacks who might be on the move. I think it's very likely Michael Vick is done in Philadelphia. They would have to pay him about $2 million to release him. I could see Michael Vick winding up with the Jets, and then we have another circus in the offseason. Is Michael Vick going to be the starter? That kind of thing. But I think to close out the year, Mark Sanchez remains the starter, and for the $8 million reason I told you a couple seconds ago, I think he's number 1 on the depth chart as they get ready for next year as well. Yeah,
I agree with you. I think Mark Sanchez is going to be the guy, and like you said, just because of financial reasons. You touched a little bit on Tim Tebow. He is he's a good football player. He's very talented. Will Tim Tebow be with the Jets next season, do you think?
Well, I can only go on what we've heard from their owner, Woody Johnson, and he was quoted about a month ago as saying Tim Tebow's going to be on that team for the rest of his contract, which is 3 years. I I would be surprised if Tebow comes back just because it was such a distraction this year, and the Jets have had so many issues with being perceived as a circus and full of drama. If Tebow's not there, that's just one less controversial element to deal with. So I don't know what you can get for him. I mean, there was a lot of speculation on the trade deadline eve. Would he be sent back to Jacksonville, his hometown, and that deal didn't come together? Remember, the Jets traded for Tim Tebow. I think they gave up a fourth-round pick, so he's an asset. You never just want to cut a guy and put him on the street without getting anything in return. But at this point, because he did nothing for them, and then a lot of that's on the offensive coaching staff, I'm surprised they didn't find other packages to utilize his skill set. They just did not seem to know what to do with him. With all the talk about the Wildcat, we never saw it except for limited doses. But even if the Jets have to eat the pick that they traded to Denver to get Tebow, I think it just makes sense to, in this relationship now, part company in the offseason, and then we'll find out what really is the interest out there. Would anybody want to sign Tim Tebow? I don't think he'd be unemployed, but it has to be the perfect situation in which you have a quarterback who's not looking over his shoulder, or a desperate team that's just trying to sell tickets or make a splash and say, hopefully we can, as that new team, replicate what Denver did 2 years ago when they got hot and he won that playoff game over the Steelers.
Interesting. All right, Brian, just a few quick questions and I'll let you go. As of right now, who do you think should be the NFL MVP?
That is a very good question. I'll give you a few names, and then I'll tell you at the end of that list who I think should get it. Let's go through who has the most realistic case to be the MVP. It's not going to be a defensive player. If it was, you put J.J. Watt number 1, you put Vaughn Miller number 2. Geno Atkins having a great year in Cincinnati. No one's talking about him. But trivia buffs will know only 2 defensive players in the last 40 years have won the MVP. Alan Page, early 70s for the Vikings. Lawrence Taylor with the Giants in the 1980s. So it's not going to be a defensive player. Then we go to quarterbacks. Tom Brady's having another remarkable year. The Patriots have only lost 3 games by a tally of 4 points, big picture. Peyton Manning has been amazing. We all have these question marks. Could he come back from his 4th neck procedure? He's been phenomenal, and Denver's red hot. Adrian Peterson, to me, belongs in that conversation as well, and also be intriguing to see what happens with comeback player of the year between Adrian Peterson and Peyton Manning, both amazing at overcoming adversity. But if you took Adrian Peterson off the Vikings, how many games does that team win? You know, that's always the way I think you can equate value in the MVP conversation, what a player means to his particular team. So Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Adrian Peterson. I'm probably overlooking somebody, but those are the top 3 that come to mind, and it's tough. I mean, I want to wait a couple more weeks before I would commit to anybody and see how things play out with Denver and New England in terms of seeding. But to me, the Adrian Peterson story is so unique. I can't think of anybody else in all of sports who's come back from an ACL and an MCL tear in the short period of time he did it. Remember, he blew out his knee on Christmas Eve last year. He was back week 1. And he's leading the league in rushing. So I think just because of the drama and the unique nature of that story, I would give Adrian Peterson my MVP vote.
I know we still have a few more weeks left, but Brian, thank you. You are the first person that has agreed with me with Adrian Peterson. I mean, this man, like you said, he destroyed his knee and his whole leg just on Christmas Eve, not a full year ago, and he could have a 2,000-yard season. I mean, it certainly looks like he's having the best season of his career, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think the numbers tell part of the story, but you have to put it in context and to think about where he was roughly 12 months ago. To come back that quickly and that effectively, to me, that's a very powerful statement, and I think will impress a lot of voters.
I agree with you, Brian. One last question. I know you're a huge Cecil Shorts III fan. He's put up some big numbers this season, man. Who has surprised you the most? Maybe they didn't come into the season with a very big name, and throughout the season they've made a name for themselves. Who has surprised you the most?
Well, as you know, because you're an avid watcher of NFL AM, and I hope your listeners will tune in as well, we have a segment every Tuesday called Hello, My Name Is. And the idea is we introduce you to guys around the league that maybe you didn't know prior to what happened on Sunday, and We just stumbled across Cecil Shorts early in the year, and also he called in. So anybody who calls our show, we like it. There's a few things going on. It's a great name. It's one of the most unique names in all of sports. And Cecil Shorts the third. Don't forget about that. He went to Tiny Mount Union College, and I just started doing the joke. All he does is score touchdowns. But every week you look around, and he's back in the end zone. In terms of who was a revelation, I knew how good Russell Wilson was in college because remember there was all the talk about when he transferred from NC State to Wisconsin and did the Wolfpack give up on him, that kind of thing, and obviously he was terrific with the Badgers as well. I did not know that he would have this kind of impact, and it transcends what he's doing on the field, and there were question marks about his height and that kind of stuff, but having interviewed him on our show, NFL AM, and just talking to people I respect, it seems like this guy has the leadership skills you usually see in somebody who's 30 or 35. That's why Carroll made the decision to go with him in the preseason, even though they gave Matt Flynn some good money as a free agent. And obviously it's been validated as the Seahawks make a playoff push. So to me, one of the biggest surprises this year has been that Russell Wilson, when we put all the attention on Andrew Luck and Robert Griffin III, and deservedly so, here's a guy who plays in a city that doesn't get a ton of pub just because of East Coast bias and that kind of stuff, who has galvanized the team, has veterans believing in him, and has the Seahawks on the brink of making the postseason. That would be one of the biggest surprises I've seen so far.
Yeah, he destroyed my Bears, even though that game went into overtime. He just played fantastic. Brian, I really appreciate your time. It was an honor to have you on. Hopefully we could do it again in the future, but before I let you go, is there anything you'd like to plug on the air for our listeners?
Well, I got this little show called NFL AM. It's 4 hours every morning, so hopefully people tune in. And in fact, it's 8 hours because we show the replay once the live show ends. So it's on for 8 consecutive hours every weekday. We start at 6 a.m. Hopefully you're tuning in and enjoying it because the idea of the show is, yes, we take football seriously. Hopefully in this conversation it's pretty clear I know what I'm talking about. We work for the NFL, but it's also a morning show. And we realize you're getting ready to go to work or school, you're eating breakfast, so you want to have a little fun to start your day, and we try to emphasize the entertainment value as well without being too over the top. So yeah, hopefully people are tuning in, and we'd definitely love to hear any feedback they have. If they want to hit me up on Twitter, my Twitter handle is BWWeber, WEBER with 2 B's.
Yeah, fantastic show NFL AM is. Brian, once again, thanks so much, and take care.
Thanks, Chris. Pleasure to talk to you.